The Chinese have a saying about these two opium-eating brothers. Si toi ko, they say, brings fat joy, which in Chinese means good luck. But to si gi ko is to bring coon joy, which means he will soon be in his coffin. Gi ko is the dreaded collector of souls, and the Chinese say that he is the last thing a person sees before he dies. He escorts the soul back to the other world, which is the Taoist equivalent of purgatory. The way into hell is across the Bridge of Sighs. Here the good souls are welcomed and courteously escorted by the infernal officials, while bad souls are harassed and bullied by a host of horrid devils. Before a soul can be born again, it must pass through the 10 courts of hell. In the first court, the soul is confronted by the mirror of Sin Yi Ching Tai, in which it sees a true reflection of its goodness or wickedness. It is then sent on to the other courts, where the wickedness is punished according to the deed. The red-hot grilling pillar is for the embrace of those who commit adultery. It is a wide belief that objects burnt on earth, the right ritual and prayers, reappear in the other world for use of the dead. At one time, genuine money, clothes and other goods were burnt, until an impoverished mandarin of the Tang dynasty proclaimed that men and ghosts were not the same. As to ghosts, counterfeits were more preferable than genuine objects. He backed up his argument by burning paper clothes instead of the usual expensive silk gowns. From that time on, paper objects like the cars and the paper house, even paper concubines were burnt to make life easier for the souls in purgatory. Temples and funeral shops make a brisk profit by selling bundles of Bank of Hell notes, which are burnt to enable the dead to bribe the corrupt infernal officials. The Chinese wear white for mourning and the sackcloth of sorrow. They follow the almost universal custom of primitive peoples who don sackcloth and ashes in an attempt to disguise themselves from the spirit of the newly dead soul, which is envious of the living, and also to convince the ghost that this kingdom of rags and tatters is unworthy of its further interest. It is not until the 7th day, when the soul reaches the 5th court and walks onto the see one's own home terrace, that it realizes it is dead. From the terrace, the departed soul can see the effect his death has had upon his own home, and what he sees always makes him weep. Evil spirits lurk everywhere to snatch the soul of the newly dead. Knowing that evil spirits are very sensitive to noise, the Chinese keep them at bay by exploding firecrackers, banging gongs, drums or cymbals. The more noise, the better. The oldest son carries a teng, which is the lantern of the spirit. At the conclusion of the burial, the teng will be left planted in the soil of the grave to enable the soul to find its way through the darkness. The peacock on the top of the hearse denotes that the deceased is a woman. Each court deals with 16 different kinds of sin, and in all there are 128 different areas of punishment, torture and terror. The connection between stilt walkers and funerals has been lost in antiquity, but they were always present at the large traditional funerals. The days of the large, impressive prestige funerals are numbered, with the high and rising costs of coffins, burial plots, and the high rates of hiring mourners with their distinctive umbrellas advertised in the funeral parlour to which they belong, brass bands, gong and drum players, the stilt walkers and other funeral trappings, including a sumptuous funeral feast. Even a simple funeral can be a heavy drain on the family resources of the living. The hearse of a man has a lion on the top. The photograph of the deceased is set on the front. Although the nearest relatives wear the sackcloth of sorrow, more distant relatives wear the different blue mourning clothes according to their relationship with the deceased. The stilt walkers, like the big funerals, are rapidly dying out, and it is rare to see them now in Singapore. Coming from the theatre with traditional makeup, the stilt walkers are an all-male company, so that men have to dress up and take the place of women. They are all highly superstitious, and their art handed down from father to son. In perhaps another decade, they will be no more, and like the large funerals, will be only a memory, or if anyone bothers to record the event, a part of the Chinese heritage. Taoists believe in reincarnation of the soul, and after it has passed through hell and been purged of its sins, the soul will enter into the dark labyrinth of the wheel of fate to eventually emerge as humans, beasts, birds, fish or insects, according to the judgment of the 10th court. At the 10th court, the souls are draped with the skin, feathers or scales for their next life and led to Mother Meng in the pavilion of forgetfulness, who provides each soul with the tea of oblivion to ensure that they remember nothing of their past lives. A small strip of white cloth may be a poor indication that a funeral is taking place. But even the poor need not despair as long as they have the tong or the family association behind them, for they will supply the gongs, the drums, the priests and the prayers. They will pull the hearse from the depths of the mean campon with a magnificent cacophony that should scare every devil for miles around. One time, all Chinese graves faced to the east, and the word orientation came from this alignment. They faced the rebirth of the rising sun, and with it, their hopes of reincarnation. The traditional Chinese coffin is carved from 6 large pieces of heavy jungle wood and is very heavy. The coffin is tied to 2 long carrion poles, and from these 2 poles are a number of shorter poles to a dense crowd of about 50 to carry the coffin to the grave. The coffin is lowered into the grave until it hangs suspended under the 2 main poles that span across the grave. The ropes are then untied and the coffin is lowered into the grave using the 2 poles, sort of windlass. A little fruit, meat, wine, and incense is offered to the soul for its effort on its journey. Many years ago, they would have offered women and slaves for its effort. Most ancient races, the land of the dead was always in the direction of the setting sun, the dying sun, westwards. Greeks believed that the land of the dead was at the extreme edge of the Western Ocean. Greeks, to go west was to die. To help the soul to return westwards, as the Chinese say, the mourners walk once more 3 times around the coffin, calling the dead person's name, telling him to take care of himself and to walk steadily. They plead with him to go peacefully and not to worry. Each mourner throwing a handful of soil onto the coffin, the grave is filled in, and the mourners drift away. Before the mourners leave, they plant the tang in the raw grave soil as a parting gesture to help guide the soul on its journey into fear, until such time as it will be born once again into this world.